Call here today. We're excited to talk about abs, back, and core. We really want to answer your questions. So I invite you at any time, whether it's now or down the road in the next 20 minutes, to pop your questions in the chat box or to just unmute and speak right up. This is an informal discussion. Lots of expertise here with the TC Fit team, and hopefully lots of questions. The word core is thrown around a lot in fitness and wellness. Let's talk a little bit just about what is the core. Kendall, do you want to take that question?
What is the core? So multifaceted, but if we put it in a Pilates perspective, yeah, I think the most important part of our core is our transverse abdominals. So it's the deepest layer of abdominals, wraps around our entire abdomen. I tend to explain it how it's like a corset or a shrink wrap. So it helps our spine, and our TA is what we typically call it. Helps with exercises such as balance. So, if we're doing, let's say, a single leg balance exercise with bicep curls, our TA, if you're properly engaging our TA, which we will talk about, is working. So it's not necessarily our typical crunch exercises, but it wraps around our entire abdomen. So, and there's also our rectus abdominals, so more into the center, and there's also our internal and external obliques. Our obliques are what allows us to twist and rotate. So that's kind of how it's broken down. I know Michelle has a great picture of this. So extension and rotation, lateral flexion, internal and external obliques are working. So there's many different layers of our abdomen, oh my gosh, our abdominals versus just that forward and backward motion. So 360.
Yeah, Kendall, that's a great start. I was going to show this image that I have up right now. You can see those six-pack abs, those abdominal rectus right smack in the middle there. That's a lot of times what people think of as, I call them the beach body abs, but they're only part of the equation. This particular image also shows our obliques. We talk about that a lot from the sides. They help us with a side bend and a little bit of a rotation there. And we don't want to forget, of course, our back muscles. A lot of times our glutes and our hips come into play when we talk about core as well. Kelsey, are there other muscles that you typically factor in when you talk about the core?
Well, just like Kendall had said, trying to hit 360. So when training or we're working out with the client, making sure that you're doing exercises in a face up position, a face down, and then getting your sides in rotation as well. So we're not just working on one aspect of your body. But I always focus on our transversus abdominis at TA because it's such an important muscle for everyone, especially as we're getting older. And also hips and glutes promote a strong lower back. So always hitting hips and glutes, all three areas of your glutes, glute max, glute medius, glute minimus. And targeting those areas very well.
Sure. Kendall, I'm going to send this question from Jennifer to you. Is Pilates the best exercise for the core, or are there others? And how often should we be exercising the core? So two parts to that question.
I wouldn't necessarily say Pilates is the best way to exercise the core, and kind of going back to that previous answer of, engaging our TA. A lot of people with strong abdominals, some don't even come into that forward flexion motion. They're doing, let's say, like wood choppers and different balance exercises and agility exercises. So these are sneaky ways to engage your abdominals. I would say Pilates is a great way to add a different format to your routine, but it also, when we're thinking about Pilates, it's helping one to strengthen our abdominals, but also more of our functional muscles as far as our deep erector spinae in our spine, and flexibility and mobility, and just being able to bend over and keep your legs straight. So Pilates is more of a functional workout. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best exercise for core, but it's a great format to add just because it can be really challenging. And there are definitely exercises that are, more of your typical crunch position, but more so building up the endurance of your abdominals by maintaining flexion with different exercises. Now, if we were to talk about how often should we exercise the core, that can be diverse as well. So, if we're talking about really hitting your core hard, like, if you were to say, let's do a leg day, you would definitely want to rest if you're doing a lot of abdominal exercises. But, a format like Pilates, that can be done most days of the week. And it is a good functional way of exercising. Kelsey, I don't know if you can add on to that as far as how often we should be exercising our core, but again, it's a lot of core exercises are sneaky balance exercises.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Kendall. I mean, think of it just like any other muscle group. So if you hit it hard one day, you're going to want to rest in order to repair and rebuild your muscles so you can ward off injury and prevent injury happening. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in on that one and just say, in general, when we talk about muscle strengthening, we say, give yourself 48 to maybe even 72 hours between workouts. But when we're just talking about movement, you can move every day. We want you moving every day. And that's going to mean, engaging some of those core muscles when you go for a walk in the afternoon, or when you decide to do a 5-minute movement break in the middle of the day. You're going to be using those muscles, but you might not be strength training to the point of momentary muscle fatigue. When you're doing those heavy, hard workouts, following up on what Kendall and Kelsey were saying, give your body a day of rest in between. A good rule of thumb is if you start a workout and you can't do what you did last time, then there's a chance that your body needs some additional rest.
Great question.
Kelsey, do you want to maybe tell us what are one or two of your favorite core exercises and let us know why they're your favorites?
Yeah, I'd love to, Michelle. So I personally have a bad back. So I love planks because planks allow me to maintain a long neutral spine instead of doing crunches that can kind of pull on my back. So let me demonstrate here one of the benefits of being on the floor. So when you are in a plank position, your body is in one long line. Let's go up here a little bit. There we go. So you can be on your knees or you can be on your toes, but here your spine is in one long neutral line. So you're not sagging through your hips. You shouldn't feel any pain there. Body's in one long line, and you're using your abdominals in kind of just a static form here. So you're holding and breathing and focusing on endurance. So prone, and then also your side planks, knees or toes, are also really good, especially if you have low back injuries. That tends to be my go-to exercise there.
Kendall, do you want to jump in with any favorites?
So one of my favorites, and I actually did it in class the other day, is a good old lateral flexion. And Kelsey and I can both say that we were really sore for days. And we did it, I think, 4 or 5 sets. So it was a pretty hefty workout. So this is when you do want to rest your abdominal muscles. When you can feel that you are sore, you need to rest. So I like a good lateral flexion. So hands back behind your head and bending from side to side. This can be a tricky exercise, however, because a common mistake is rounding forward and twisting, and that can kind of tweak your back. So almost think of like you're in a toaster oven. You don't want to get burned forward and back. You want to go side to side. So that's one of my favorites, is to really target your obliques.
Kendall, did you do that in a supine position, so laying on the floor, or did you do it in a standing position?
That was a standing position. So I had a wide sumo stance with my legs and then hands back behind my head. So kind of in a squat position and then bending. So it was nice to get a stretch, and also working your internal and external obliques, which they kind of weave together.
Perfect. That's a great example of, you don't always need to be laying on the floor or laying on your back to do a core-based exercise. That's what some of my favorite ones come out of Kelsey's step aerobics videos. So when we're doing some standing cross-body crunches, we take that elbow to the opposite knee. It's just a little bit different than thinking I need to be on the floor doing sit-ups and planks. Kendall, I'm going to send a question out to you. When we were talking about Pilates earlier, a lot of times with Pilates, I think of pelvic tilt. Do you have any thoughts on what we should be working on or thinking about with pelvic tilt and core exercises?
Well, pelvic tilts are a great functional exercise to do. When I look at it from a Pilates standpoint, or even just a personal training standpoint, it's a good activation for your abdominals. One thing, that we really kind of pound on are the glutes. Squeeze your glutes, squeeze your glutes. So when we go into our pelvic tilts, which, with a pelvic tilt, we have a neutral and imprint spine. Neutral spine, if you're in a standing position, is just kind of honoring that natural S-shaped curve of your spine. And with an imprint, you have a posterior pelvic tilt. So think of your two bony hips, and you tilt them. And Kelsey's going to demonstrate right now. So Kelsey is in a neutral spine here. And now as she tilts her pelvis, this is a posterior pelvic tilt. The small of the back gets closer down to the ground, and she's really engaging her TA abdominals, her transverse abdominals. So a good way to kind of figure out if you're actually firing these muscles is placing 2 fingertips to the outside of your belly button, really digging in there. I know so many people say, I don't have those muscles. Yes, just dig a little deeper. They're in there. And as you're doing these pelvic tilts, you'll feel your transverse abdominals turning on. Now, going back to what we were talking about with the glutes, you want to try to release your glutes. This is the one time I want you to release your glutes and not squeeze your glutes. But as you're tilting your pelvis, you want to strictly rely on your abdominals to pull your pelvis back and forth versus squeezing your glutes. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of one of those exercises that takes time and practice. But once you have it, it's a good activation exercise for your TA.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat box a link to a Pilates video that talks about Pilates principles and includes that pelvic tilt in case anybody wants to see some additional visual examples of that. Looking here at a question from Jennifer, and maybe Matt, if you're out there, you can jump in, but the question is, what about a yoga ball? How long should we be using it or sitting on it? And so what I'm thinking you mean by yoga ball is like a big stability ball. They come in like, I think 36 inches and even up to 55 inch centimeters. Thank you.
65 centimeters. Yeah.
Thanks, Kels. So those big balls that you see in the gym, or maybe you have at home, those big stability balls. So I like a stability ball because it's kind of fun and different. And when I'm doing some abdominal work, I can support my low back, or I can use it to intensify my exercises like my planks. As far as using it like a chair, that starts to get into the ergonomic side of things. So again, Matt could jump in, but I know I've heard him say many times, you can have poor posture on a stability ball just as easy as you can have poor posture on a chair. And our goal is to get up and move. So if you choose to use it for a few minutes here and there, That's great because you're moving your body around and doing different things. But in general, I believe I've heard Matt say it's not going to strengthen our core just because we use it for 20 minutes or an hour a day. It's still about engaging those muscles like the transverse abdominis that Kendall and Kelsey have been talking about.
Michelle, I'll hop in real quick. So they actually, in short, I usually tell people if you want to sit on that 5 or 10 minutes every hour, that's great. They're kind of fun to bounce up and down on. There were some research studies out there that looked at sitting on a stability ball as a, I'll turn my camera on here, as a chair replacement. And in short, what they found out was that you don't engage your core as much as people might think so just sitting on it. It's no different than sitting on a wooden stool. Now that's, if you're doing crunches and doing work, that's a different story, but just normally sitting on it, you do not engage your core that much more, and you're certainly not going to lose weight by sitting on a stability ball. There were 2 studies done. These were old studies, but I couldn't find any more. I don't think there's many more recent studies. These are about 10 years ago. In fact, also sitting on stability ball, people reported increased pain. So in short, it's the potential benefits don't outweigh the potential negatives. And if you want to use it for short duration, that's fine. If you do use it for short duration, same ergonomic principles apply. You should find the right size so that your hips are open to about 100 degrees and your feet are flat on the floor. I could go on a lot longer, but I'll tune off. Now, if people have other questions, just email me directly.
Thanks, Matt. You mentioned something about it's not going to help you lose weight. So that I always like it when I get the question of, if I do abdominal crunches, am I going to lose this forward pouch, or am I going to see 6-pack abs? And the short answer to that is, it's not just about the muscle you're building underneath, but about your diet, your nutrition, your body fat percentage. So we want those muscles to be strong, and that's important for our overall health. But when it comes to seeing a change in the shape of our midsection, thinking about posture, thinking about our diet and our body fat percentage are probably going to be more important than just doing crunches every day. Kendall or Kelsey, do you want to jump in on that?
I agree.
I do as well. And I think Michelle, with you talking about posture, I'm just looking at a question that came in. What about standing up at your desk? Would that help to tone up the core? Is there a time limit for that? So posture is a huge part of your core. And, when we're seated for a long period of time, this can happen, and then rounding through the shoulders and losing the abdominal engagement. Core definitely does help with posture. And I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a time limit for standing, just like walking. If you're feeling like your low back is starting to hurt and needs a break, go ahead and take a seat. But I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a time limit on standing at a standing desk, but I don't know Michelle, Kelsey, how do you feel about that?
I've heard a tip from TC Fit physical therapist Andrea Myers in the past, and I believe it was sit for 20, stand for 8, move for 2. Matt, do you want to jump in on that? And I mean minutes.
Yeah, tip, that's good. At the end of the day, we kind of say painting with a broad brush, 80-20, right? 80% sitting, 20% standing. And certainly other people's orthopedic issues might dictate otherwise, but in short, listen to your body. And it's a mistake to say you want to stand all day, because in industrial ergonomics, when we have people on a line, we're trying to find reasons for them to sit down. So it's kind of that 80-20-ish rule, but if it feels better for you to go 60-40, do that. At the end of the day, remember that the nutrition in your discs throughout your spine, and then also throughout your joint surfaces, throughout your body, only receive nutrition through movement. So changing movement is good, but it's also more than just sitting and standing statically. It is getting away from that desk and simply walking. Just that natural human movement, walking is good too, and that's good for your brain. It's good for your body. It's good for productivity. So I feel like I'm digressing away from our core talk. I do think core exercises are very good, and I've appreciated this conversation here. I think you got a great crew here that knows all about the importance of core.
Thanks, Matt. I am going to share a link to live streaming group fitness classes. Kelsey or Kendall, do you want to jump in with, if we're thinking about training our core muscles, so everything from the lower part of the rib cage to our glutes, which classes should we get on our calendar first?
So Kendall does Pilates on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Central Time, just mat Pilates, which is a great option. We also added on Tuesday a 10-minute core burner, little 10-minute core blast post body weight HIIT class. So if you take body weight HIIT, which is also a great, functional abdominal routine and whatnot, you can stay on for the 10 minutes, or if you're unable to make class beforehand, you can just log in at the 12:25 mark. So both of those classes would be extremely beneficial. But again, you're using your abdominals and your torso with all movement, and that's where kind of the movement is stemming from. So all classes are very beneficial, but I would highly suggest Pilates and core.
Kendall, do you have any additional thoughts today about abs, back, or core that you want to share with the group?
I would just add, try to get in as much movement as you can throughout the day. And it's a beautiful day outside, go for a walk. Also thinking of, what Matt said about, I don't want to say limitations, but, creating a healthy balance for your body. So yeah, there's great exercise classes that we're doing, and Kelsey mentioned those if you're wanting to target more of your core work. But again, pretty much all of the classes we're doing exercises that target your transverse abdominals. You may not know that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I like hearing that. And when you talk about going out for a walk, there will be times when I'm walking, a lot of times I'm moving those arms hip to nose, but I'll pause and I'll just put those hands right on the obliques or right on the abdominal muscles, and feeling that touch and getting that brain body connection of engaging those muscles. And you talk about that transverse abdominis, just thinking about tightening up that internal girdle, like you're going to tighten your belt just one notch, not so much that you're clamping down and gritting your teeth, but just a gentle draw of that internal belt to get those muscles engaged, even when you're doing things like walking. Okay. I'm going to open this up to the group. One last chance for questions. Kelsey, any closing thoughts from you?
No, just keep moving and grooving your bodies.
We love seeing everybody on the calls here. And coming up next Wednesday, Diffuse the Winter Blues. So that's going to be with me, brought to you by the Employee Club Wellness Committee. So make sure you get that on your calendar. And our next question and answer session with the fitness team is November 18th at 1 p.m. So we're a little bit later on that date for a men's health and fitness. Matt will be on that call, as well as Paul Linson with the Quad Med team. So get those on your calendar now. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Fitness Center email account. That's